Hi, I'm Dr. Sandra Parker. In my over 30 years of practice as a psychologist, I've come to understand a surprising cause of human suffering. There's a thing that I call experience avoidance that's at the heart of what brings people into my door. And I want to share with you what is going on with experience avoidance, because it's quite a hard thing to see. In fact, people say, what do you mean I'm avoiding my experience? I'm here, right? What I mean by that is that day to day, moment to moment, and particularly when you're struck with vulnerability, a limit to control over something that matters to you, there's an inner felt sense of something in your body that, without meaning to, you are avoiding. This is a very important thing to understand, because in the moment that you're vulnerable, in the moment where the truth of being human slaps you in the face, that you can't make everything that you want, or really anything that you want, happen single-handedly through your own efforts, people kind of split into two groups. There's a group of people who, when their body stirs with the unrest in their body in that moment, they remove themselves from that discomfort. They shut down, they numb out, they compartmentalize, they tune out. Essentially, they deny this experience of vulnerability. And they look fine, but deep in their body, there are processes, inflammatory processes, stress-based processes, that are going to wear their batteries down and drain them. And these are folks that can end up feeling burnt out, exhausted, overworked, unappreciated. Sometimes they can develop illnesses, problems with their immune system, or problems in their digestive system, things like IBS, which, please understand, I'm not saying that all causes of illness are to do with stress, but this can be a contributing factor for some people. The other group of people actually looks anxious. What happens in that moment when they are touched by vulnerability is they immediately go to a story that's threatening, that they go to something that feels scary, and they react fearfully. And once they're on that hamster wheel of telling themselves threatening things, they feel overwhelmed and anxious and worried and feel like they need to get control. So the world kind of splits in two, these kind of stoic, push through, competent, confident, on the outside looking people who are suffering deeply on the inside but not aware of it. And then this other group of people who would look anxious and appear to be struggling, but really both groups are suffering. And at the heart of basically both of those groups, or all of us really, all of our suffering, is this unconscious reflex to move away from the discomfort of being a vulnerable human being. And that experience of moving away is really what I've been working on for 30 years with people, helping people find a way to come back home. And home is the body, to come home to the inner felt experience in the moment, in the body, when we're vulnerable, when we're smacked up against limits to control. And this unconscious reflex, I've given it a name, unrest. It's your nervous system that signals you right in the most important, most optimal moment for you to come home. But unfortunately, that signaling is coming through your nervous system in the same circuitry that fear travels, your sympathetic nervous system. And unconsciously, we're not even noticing this jolt of energy. We are prompted either to tune out or to freak out. And if you can understand that the call is really to tune in, you open a doorway to growth. You can avoid suffering and, in fact, use that moment to become more of who you're meant to be. I love the way that the Buddhists talk about this experience, this very human experience. They talk about that there's the inevitable pain of life, which is true. Life is full of losses and limits and frustrations and blocks to things. And that's not something we can do anything about. That's built into the human journey. They say that that fact of life is just what we live with. But after we have been struck by this first arrow of the pain of life, they say that that's manageable if we have only the one arrow. But they say there's a second arrow. So the pain is the first arrow, and suffering is the second arrow. And they call suffering the things that we do to avoid feeling pain. Isn't that beautiful? So we can feel the pain and come out the other side adaptive, resilient, connected, or we can avoid feeling the pain, doing all the clever things that we do to not feel it, and suffer. And that matches so well for me as a psychodynamic psychotherapist, because we talk about emotions as being painful. Even the good feelings can feel painful. I remember holding the newborn daughter of a dear friend, and I thought my sternum was going to crack open. It was so full of joy to hold this little baby. So even good feelings can be painful when they're intense. And certainly, of course, we know that sadness and anger can be painful. And yet, if we can feel it fully, there's a wave that carries us through to something that is adaptive, something that helps us come to terms with reality. And so that feeling of the pain actually takes us somewhere wonderful, somewhere good, somewhere growth promoting. But everything we do to not feel the pain, the second arrow, as the Buddhists would say, everything we do to avoid experiencing the pain creates suffering, and that suffering, it's kind of a flat line. It isn't time limited the way emotion is time limited, the way that wave peaks and then ebbs and then shifts into something else that's life affirming. The resistance to the pain, the defenses against the pain, that second arrow of suffering keeps us from feeling the peak of the pain, so it's down a little bit, but it is a flat line forever. I find it interesting that flatline is another term for, being dead, right? So if you want to be alive, you've got to be able to ride these waves of feeling, which means being able to experience in your body what it feels like in the moment when you're touched by life, when you're moved by life, when the vulnerable truth of yourself is in your face. And unrest is this brilliant call from your body, illuminating the optimal moment to come home to your body. The world needs you here, not disconnected, not detached, not avoidant. This world needs you here in all your glory and all of your emotional truth, in all of your resources and capacities. We need you here. All humans benefit from all of us being here and present and alive. So I invite you to have a look at unrest in a new way, to come into your body, to use it as your invitation to be here, be present, feel the truth of being here, and give your gifts to the world.